Hello, in this video we're going to look at solving 6 types of quadratics. So it can be a bit confusing when you get in the exam and you don't know what method to use. So let's have a look, and these are aimed at year 9 as well. Okay, there is some more complicated methods, but not in this video. So this is the method we're going to use. You first need to get it into standard form, the quadratic into standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So you need to make 0 on its own, okay? And then you're going to decide which method. So there's the highest common factor. If you have an x squared only term, there's a method. If you've got a perfect square, you've got a pattern. And if you've got a trinomial, we've got a method for that too. Then you're going to solve using the null factor law, okay? Which just says, if two numbers multiply to give 0, one of those numbers must equal 0. First one, and we've got our little method down here from the previous page. So 2x squared take 8x equals 0. Okay, it's in standard form because it equals 0. Now we've just got to decide which method. So this says highest common factor. We're going to pull it out the front. Now, is there a common factor amongst these two terms? There is, because these are both even. So 2 is a common factor. And amongst the x squared and the x, you choose the one with the lowest power. So x comes out the front. And then we are just going to work out, okay, 2x times what would give me 2x squared? Well, 2x times x. 2x times what would give me negative 8x? So 2 times negative 4 would give me negative 8. And then x is already there. So that is all right. And if you wanted to check, you can see 2x times x gives me x squared. 2x times negative 4 gives me negative 8x. Okay, so that's it. We have, it's not it yet. We have factorized, we've put it into brackets. Now we come to step 3, the null factor law. Now, students get confused here because this number isn't in brackets. So I'm going to just put that in brackets now. And null factor law might become a little bit more clear. So null factor law. So if a times b equals 0, let's actually write it off to the side. So if, a times b equals 0, a equals 0, or b equals 0. That's the null factor law. So we have this bracket times this bracket equals 0. So either 2x equals 0 or the other bracket equals 0. Try and make sense of that. So aligning with this, one bracket equals 0 or the other bracket equals 0. That's all it is. And now we're just going to solve each of these separately. So if I divide by 2 on both sides, we can see, okay, x is 0. If I need to get x on its own, I'm adding 4 to both sides, so x is 4. Those are our solutions. And we're going to see later that solutions to quadratics are the x-intercepts. So it's important to be able to solve quadratics to find x-intercepts when we're plotting parabolas, but more on that later. Now, next one, 5x squared equals 20. Okay, this one you don't actually have to do as much work because if there's only an x squared term there and no x, you can just solve it. Okay, notice in the last one, there was an x squared and an x. You're never going to be able to just rearrange for that. But with this one, we can just rearrange for it. So I will show you. Now, so I want to get x on its own. It's hugging x squared and then 5 is the outer layer. Okay, so I want to remove that 5, that coefficient first. And there's a little invisible multiply sign. And the opposite of multiplying by 5 is dividing by 5. So what I do to one side, I do to the other. 20 divided 5 is 4. X squared equals 4. Now this step is very important. If we have x squared equals 4 and we take the square root of both sides, because that's the opposite of squaring, right? you have to put a plus or minus out the front when you take that square root. Okay, so we're going to have x equals plus or minus square root 4. And I will show you why soon. And then you look, okay, what is the square root of 4? The square root of 4 is 2. So if you want to split it off into its solutions, x equals 2 or x equals negative 2. And can you see that the square root of 4 has a positive and negative solution? Because 2 times 2 is 4, and negative 2 times negative 2, negative times a negative is a positive. So that's why if you've got a positive number under the square root sign and you need to put a plus or minus out the front, okay? That's important. So just beware of these types. Where there's just an x squared term and no x, you can rearrange for it quite easily. Okay, next type. So just looking at our checklist, is it in standard form? Is it equaling 0? Yes, it is. And I just realized there's a couple of ways to solve this one. Just like the last type, right? The last type only had an x squared term. So we could rearrange for that. We could say, okay, if I add the 4 to both sides, it's going to be x squared equals positive 4. And then if I take the square root of both sides, I have to put the plus or minus out the front there. Okay, so our answer is going to be x equals plus or minus plus or minus 2, because root 4 is 2. Now, there is another way to solve this, because this is a difference of 2 squares. So let me just write it down again. The difference of 2 squares for pattern is if there is like the first and last number is a square. Sorry, it's a big bus that went by. So we can rewrite this as x squared take 2 squared. So it's worth knowing your square numbers. Okay, now at this stage, I can recognize my difference of 2 squares. A squared take b squared factorizes to a plus b bracket a minus b. So that is it. Now we're just going to say a is x and b is 2. Let me move that up a bit. So let's get rid of that. So a is x, b is 2, and we are just going to plug that in. Okay, a plus b. Okay, a is x, b is 2. Right, we're just substituting in, and then we're just doing x take 2. And back up here, we know that this equals 0. Now, null factor law, if a times b equals 0, then either a equals 0 or b equals 0. So we can split this off into its two terms. So x plus 2 equals 0, or the other bracket, x take 2 equals 0. And then you have to go ahead and solve those linear equations that it's been broken off into. X equals negative 2 or x equals positive 2. So obviously this way is a bit quicker, isn't it? But if you were asked to factorize using difference of 2 squares, that's what you do. Fun, right? Okay, this one, solving, okay? Always check you got it in standard form as a first step when you're solving quadratics. So you want to move all the terms to the other side so that it equals 0. Then you're deciding which method. Okay, highest common factor, pull it out the front. 1 second. I just realized that I have done this one. Let's delete that. Okay, this one, x squared take 8x plus 16. Now notice at the start and end, there are square numbers, particularly this one. 16 is a square number. So, if that is the case, I want to check if it's a perfect square. So I can say a squared take 2ab plus b squared. And I know that that factorizes to a take b squared. So there was a previous video that looked at factorizing using perfect squares. So maybe go back and have a look at that one. So we have that. Now let's say a equals x, because we're just aligning that, right? And what I just forgot, express it as a squared number first, okay? It's important to express this, actually. Express this as 4 squared. So now we know that b is 4, right? B is 4. So that's important. And so we got that. Now let's just plug it into here. A is x. A is x. B is 4. And I've got a subtraction sign in between. And it is also good to check. All right, check whether I get this answer. X squared take 8x plus 16. So 1 second. So we will have x squared take 2 times x times 4 plus 4 squared. I'm just looking at that and substituting in. And indeed, we do get x squared take 8x plus 16. You just want to double check. Even if there's a square number at the start and end, it's good to check that. Sorry. X take 4 squared. Okay, so that is factorized. We've got that, it's factorized. And it equals 0, we know that. So let's try and solve this. What have we got? Okay, this is being squared. So let's take the square root of both sides. That's going to cancel. This is going to be x take 4 equals 0. And we're going to add that 4 to both sides. So x equals 4. Okay, that's what that is. And if you need to solve it using the null factor law, let's look at this step here. We have, actually, we're just going to move on. Okay. This is what we're doing. Now we've got this one, x squared plus 2x take 8 equals 0. First step, check it's in standard form. Looks good. And decide which method. Is there a highest common factor amongst all terms? No, there's not. Is there an x squared only? No, there's an x squared and an x. Is there square numbers at the start and end? No. A trinomial where a is 1. Yes, it is. So we're using this method. The factors of c that add to b. I think it's called product sum factor. So we're looking at what two numbers multiply to give -8 and add to give 2. Okay, well, 8 times 1 won't get us in the vicinity, but what about 4 times 2? And because it's a negative, we know that one of these numbers must be a negative. So I am going to try, if I tried -4 plus 2, that's going to be -2. What if I try -2 plus 4? Yep, that's going to work. It's going to give us +2. So these are our numbers. These are our numbers. So now, now we are just going to, we can just put them in some brackets. Actually, we're going to split that middle term into those. X squared plus 4x minus 2x minus 8. That's what splitting the middle term is, right? We're not changing it. It's just splitting it because 2x is the same as 4x take 2x. Okay. And then we are just going to look at it in pairs. So x times x plus 4 gives me that. And then what else do we have? So we know that x plus 4 must be in the brackets. And we're going to have, okay, a common factor of 2 out the front, and we just need to make sure that it's negative because negative 2x take 8. So if you're confused, just expand it, see if you get what you need to, okay? And then you're going to do x take 2, right? So whatever's outside of these brackets is going to go in a bracket, and this bracket is a common factor. So that's going to be x plus 4 equals 0. And then you've got, okay, 2 brackets equaling 0. That means the null factor law. So therefore, x take 2 equals 0, or x plus 4 equals 0. X equals positive 2, or x equals negative 4. Those are our solutions to this trinomial thing. And last question. Okay, it's a little bit of a combination of a couple of methods here. Okay, first thing, make sure it's in standard form. Yay, it's in expanded form because it's all equaling 0. Decide which method. Okay, is there a highest common factor? Is there a highest common factor amongst these 3 terms? Yes, there is. It is 5. So we're going to pull that out the front, and then we're just going to ignore it for a bit, okay? So 5 times what gives me 5x squared? 5 times x squared. 5 times what gives me negative 5x? Well, 5 times negative 1 x gives me that, so negative x. 5 times what gives me negative 10 times negative 2. Okay, so that's looking good. Now, we are going to ignore this 5 for a second. We're just going to write it straight down and try and factorize this bit, because now a is equal to 1. So we're looking at this trinomial bit, factors of c that add to give b. Okay. So, sorry, itchy nose. So let's just ignore that 5, even rub it out, and try and factor that. X squared take x take 2. So we need 2 numbers that multiply to give the end number, and they add to give the coefficient of that middle number. So negative, they add to give negative 1. So let's try, well, we've only got one option, right? With a couple of different negative or positive signs. 2 times 1 is negative 2. We need a negative in there. So one of these numbers must be negative. So what if I made it negative 1 times negative 2? And then we have this. So 2 plus negative 1 was the same as 2 minus 1, which is 1. So that means we've got to put the minus on the other number and just check it out. Negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1. So these are our numbers, okay? Now we are going to split that middle term, but we're just going to write down the 5 straight away. Remember how I said ignore it? And we're just going to write it down and focus on factoring this bit. So we've got x squared take 2x plus 1x take 2 equals 0. Just focusing on factorizing that, okay? And that looks good because we're just splitting that middle term, right? That's all, we're not changing it. Then just write the 5 straight down, and we're going to go x, we're going to just break it up and factor by grouping. X times x gives x squared take, okay, so x times x, looks good, And then we're going to factor this one. So we know that there must be a bracket of x take 2. So I'm just going to write that. And we just need 1x take 2. So 1, that works. Okay. 5 bracket. Now you're just going to pull. This is where a pair of brackets is the common factor. Okay. So we're going to go, x plus 1. X take 2. So x take 2 is that common factor. And then we've got everything in brackets now. So what we could do is we could just divide by this annoying 5 on both sides. Let's do that. Divide by 5. divide by 5, we get 0, and we just get those 5s cancel. And then we are ready for the null factor. If A times B equals 0, A equals 0, or B equals 0. So that means we split it off into its linear equations. X plus 1 equals 0, or the other bracket equals 0. X equals -1, or X equals 2. Those are your solutions. So yeah, just use this factorizing method in year 9, just to decide which method to use. This is your strategy, okay? Get it into standard form so that all the terms are on the left-hand side and it's equaling 0. Try and pull a highest common factor out the front as a first step. And if it's an x squared only term, like in that problem before, you can just rearrange. You can rearrange for x nicely. If it's a perfect square, you can use that pattern, right? Perfect square or a difference of 2 squares. This is difference of 2 squares. And if it's a trinomial, you've got the factors of the like what we just did, right? You get the factors and you split that middle term, and that is all right. So I hope that helped, and I'll see you in the next video.